Oh, this one I did a little bit of a modification on. And this is the first one I did. Of course, you modify the first one. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Yarn Curator Podcast. My name is Naomi, and welcome to my little channel where I like to talk about primarily knitting as well as spinning and crafting and the fiber arts. I know it's been a while since I've sat down and filmed a regular full episode, so if it's a little rambly and all over the place, I apologize. I also wrote show notes earlier this week and have lost them. So I apologize for that, but I wanted to take the time to go ahead and sit down and say hello to you guys and touch in with those of you who are my regular viewers. If you are new to this channel, welcome. Like I said, my name's Naomi and I am the Yarn Curator. I am a museum curator who lives here in Florida, and hence the name. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here as well. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I am the Yarn Curator on Instagram and House of Cardigans on Ravelry. I am most active on Instagram, so yeah, feel free to check those out if you'd like. So I'm going to jump straight into kind of administrative, whatever notes you want to call this here at the beginning. My sister Zoey and I are going to be hosting a knit along together. It's going to run roughly from the 1st of January through the end of March, I believe we said. We're calling it a New Year Old Yarn Cow, where you work to use up yarn from your stash. It's a pretty loose, informal knit along, make along if you'd like. So whips are allowed as long as they're under 50 to 75%, use your judgment. Yarn that has not been purchased in 2020, so whatever you have from last decade or earlier, it's good. We are both going to do some prizes, and then we are planning on creating a joint Ravelry group between our two podcasts. It just seems like the easier, more logical way to manage everything. So keep an eye out for details on the Ravelry group. But if you want to enter the giveaway and the prizes, we'll be doing a drawing from Instagram as well as Ravelry. So use the hashtag New Year Old Yarn. So that is number one. Number two, if you watched my Vlogmases, thank you so much for tuning in. I know I kind of fell off the face of YouTube towards the end. It just got too busy with the holidays and my parents being here, and it was just too much to keep up with, and so something had to go, and making daily vlogs for me was what went at the end. So I apologize that I just kind of disappeared on you. And yeah, I do have a little bit of film footage left over from Vlogmas. I'm planning on placing it at the end of today's episode, so if you want to see that, stay tuned to the end. If I remember while I'm editing, I'll also put in a timestamp where you can find that. So the last little bit of administrative type stuff that I want to get to kind of right at the beginning of today's episode is I've been thinking about how I can possibly restructure the content that I provide on my channel into shorter, more easily digestible videos. I know not everyone has 30 to 45 minutes to dedicate to a video, to sit down and watch it. And there's so many other knitting podcasts out there that I want to make it as easy and as friendly to immerse yourself in as possible. So I've been debating a few different ways to do that, and you guys let me know down below what you like. Do you like the more traditional kind of half-hour to hour-long format, or would you be interested in like individual projects, individual videos on projects? So like just a quick 5-minute whip down or finished object. Would you prefer I break full episodes into 3 different uploaded videos where it's kind of administration and finished objects, and then works in progress / life stuff. Or, I've been listening to a fair number of audiobooks the last 6 months or so. So I could do kind of 5-minute uploads of book reviews or recipes. I know on Vlogmas, a lot of people commented on the food that we were making. So I can upload some cooking content, and we're just starting to really dig into gardening here in the winter in Florida. So some of that. So you might see Mr. Yarn Curator in the background. He's been into propagating agave and aloe pups lately off some plants we have here on the property, so I can make some videos related to that. If you're interested in that, let me know. If you're not interested in that, feel free to let me know as well. Like I said, I want to make it as friendly and welcoming as a space, but this channel is also a way for me and in some ways my husband to document our life and things we're working on and creating and all of that good stuff. So let me know what you think down below. I think that's about it for one last administrative thing. I do plan on uploading probably in the next week or two another video for my Make 9 projects that I'm thinking about making in the new year. I don't want to overwhelm this episode too much because there's already going to be a lot that I'm cramming in. So I'm going to make that a separate video, maybe Sunday morning. Today's Friday the 10th, and I kind of have a weird work weekend this weekend, and I'll talk about that at the end, kind of in the life update, because it's a cool opportunity that's throwing off my weekend right now. So stay tuned for that at the end. But yes, I will also be uploading a Make 9 video here in the near future. Since I've been gone so long, this is a time when I think maybe uploading just a singular finished objects video might be best. All right, you guys, so we're gonna jump straight into finished objects. I have quite a bit to show you, and it's very diverse and broad in subject matter. So since I did take a little bit of a vacation from YouTube, and then I took some time off of work as well while my parents were in town, I've had some great time to do a lot of making. So for my finished objects, they're going to include knitting, sewing, which I've yet to show on the channel, and spinning as well. So we'll jump right in. The first object I've finished is my faded flax light, and I'm going to go ahead and overlay this portion with some video footage I already took of me wearing it. It's a little bit warm today, so I'm not going to put it on, but I did wear it to work yesterday. It is incredibly comfortable. I've gotten a ton of compliments on it. So here is my finished flax light. It is knit out of woolen boon, chink fibers, and La Bien Aimée in the colorways following that same order: ambrosia salad, smudge, and peach pom pom. I did a few different modifications to this pattern. I knit it in the size medium large. It's a very generously graded sizing from infant to, I don't even know what it goes up to, but Tin Can Knits is awesome for size inclusivity. So they have a size between large and medium. It's like a medium large is how they describe it, which is what I knit and is perfect for my bust. So I only had 3 skeins that I wanted to do in this fade. So I did a half-length sleeve, so it hits me right at my elbows, and it hits right about mid-hip, which is where I like my sweaters to hit. And I absolutely love it. It's super comfortable. So I've mentioned this in the past, but how I did my fade was I just randomly alternate colors. So I might do, every other for a few rows of the 2 different colors, and then 2 rows one color, then 1 row the next color, then maybe 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1. Just kind of made it up till I thought it looked good, and it looked like it blended well. The other thing I think that is key to getting really nice fades is when you're blending those colors together, do it for a solid inch or two, because it's going to trick the eye a little bit more into moving from one to the next. Sometimes I feel like fades happen pretty rapidly, where you only work maybe 4 rows of the color transition, and it's like, doesn't really have a chance to blend. So those are my tips to creating a fade. So other modifications I did is on the sleeves here, you can see it has a little garter stitch panel detail. I did not carry that through my entire sleeves. I just left it on the shoulder. So this is, it's a free pattern on Ravelry, so it's not like I'm giving anything away. It's a raglan sweater, and you increase, then you divide off your sleeves, work the body, pick your sleeve stitches back up, and then work your sleeves. So I worked the garter panel to where you divide your sleeves, and then I just decided I wanted to keep it simple, just a really small detail for the garter panel on the sleeves. If I were to knit this again, I think I might do a little bit of waist shaping, and the other modification that I did is I'm not sure what it called for its cuffs, but I did a 1x1 rib, and I actually did a twisted rib just because that's personally what I prefer on most of my cuffs. I find my cuffs usually get stretched out a lot, so it's one of the things I've been experimenting with. I'm not sure if I like how it stands up to the test of wear though, because it's looking kind of stretched out. So we shall see. That may be something that changes. But overall, I'm really happy with this knit. I'm really happy to add something new and different to my handmade wardrobe, because, and this is something I've kind of been learning about myself as I've been growing as a knitter, is I like to make things that are functional for me. And so, like, I don't really knit socks that much because Mr. Yarn Curator just made a face at me from the backyard. But as I was saying, I don't really like to make socks because I don't really like to wear socks. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of been something that I've discovered as I've really gone down the knitting rabbit hole, is what I like to make and why I like to make those types of things. So for me, functional wardrobe pieces probably bring me the most joy. I don't really make a lot of hats, even though I do have a hat to show you here in a second, because I find hats really challenging to wear with all this hair. I either have to wear a hat, I usually have to braid my hair in pigtails to be able to get anything to fit on my head, because it just looks weird with a ponytail, and it's a whole thing that I'm not going to go on a random tangent about. But yes, so I think if you're struggling with your knitting, or maybe you're not satisfied with what you're creating, think about what you like to use or wear the most, or maybe it's not, clothing or accessories. Maybe you really like making dishcloths or, gifting things to people, but I tend to be a selfish knitter, so I'm thinking about me in this instance. Maybe there's other wall art, things along those lines. So like I said, I'm really happy to add this into my wardrobe. And as an aside, I am really proud of myself. I made 9 garments in 2019, and 15 projects in total, 9 of those being garments, which is pretty damn good, considering I don't think of myself as the world's fastest knitter. I did a lot of traveling. I made things for other people. I made things for my local yarn shop within that, and so that's another video I'm thinking about putting out, just a quick 15-minute, 1 minute on each project. This is what I made in 2019. So this was my final cast off of 2019. I finished it on Christmas morning, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, 9 garments in 2019, that's crazy. So for my second finished object that I have to show you guys, it is the Arctic Willow hat. And I apologize, I don't have the designer's name in front of me, but I will put it down below. So this is a hat that I made for my mother-in-law. If you've watched earlier episodes of the podcast, you'll know that in November, I went out to Austin, Texas for my friend Amelia's wedding. And while I was out there, my mother-in-law was a saint. She loaned me her vehicle for a few days. They let me stay with them. And then they took me to yarn shops as well, kind of in between wedding functions. So this is yarn that I picked up in Austin at a local yarn shop called Hill Country Weavers. The yarn itself is Biches y Bichou, and I will put that information down below. So since this is not a superwash merino, I knew it was something that would really show off texture well when it was knit up. So I kind of wanted to do something with cables or a really cool textured stitch pattern. Couldn't really find anything that I was like in love with, but I did really like this hat pattern, and Lord knows I must love my mother-in-law to do a hat with all over cables that have a cable repeat every other row and purl stitches. So here's what it looks like. It's a really simple pattern. I believe it's graded for 3 different sizes, but as you can see there, it has this beautiful crisscross that makes kind of a lattice diamond work. And I have to tell you guys, when I was working on this and I first started it, I was like, I don't know about this yarn with these needles and this pattern. But after I got through the first repeat, it all started to come together. It's kind of like when you start a new book, you kind of have to give it, 100 pages or so to see if you really want to read it. So this was a pattern where I really had to give it a shot before I decided to continue on. So the ribbing is done on size 1s. The main body is done on size 3s. And it's a really kind of addictive pattern because you keep seeing it grow and it's intuitive, so you can kind of memorize, okay, I'm gonna do a left leaning or a right leaning cable now. So yeah, it was kind of addictive to knit because it's like, oh, I just want to do one more row, or I want to do one more half of the pattern repeat. So I think I knocked it out probably in about 4 or 5 days. I knit on it pretty monogamously, and yeah, I'm just waiting on I ordered a faux fur pom-pom to throw on top with a popper from a shop on Etsy, and yeah, I think that'll look super cute, and then I'll get that in the mail to her. And yeah, I think she will hopefully love it. I know she'll love the faux fur pom-pom because at a few of the yarn shops that we visited, she was really into those. So I have to apologize if I keep moving my hair out of my face. I just got my hair cut and she redid kind of the bangs / layers around my face, and it keeps falling right here. It's driving me crazy. But I like the way it looks when it's properly to the side. So if you are looking for a fun, quick hat, I definitely recommend you check out this pattern. I think it cost maybe $3 or $4 on Ravelry. It is not a free pattern, but it's quite enjoyable. So yeah, the Arctic Willow hat in Biches y Bichous. So next up, I'm going to talk just briefly and put in some film footage about finished spinning. So once again, if you've watched previous episodes, you'll know that I was spinning a braid from Malabrigo on their Nude base in the Bio Electrica colorway. I did finish plying that together throughout Vlogmas, and you can see a little bit of footage of that. However, I have gifted that skein of yarn as a Christmas present, so you'll see footage of the finished skein on here. It is 350 yards of fingering weight, hand spun. I did a worsted spin and the yarn was pretty compacted, so I just broke it down into really thin strips and then spun it kind of super fine from there. So I have a love-hate relationship with Malabrigo. It's one of the affordable rovings on the market, but it's kind of hit or miss if you're going to get a nice braid that drafts easily, or if you're going to get one that's a little bit felted and kind of harder to spin. So I've had mixed experience with the 3 or 4 braids from them that I've spun. I don't think I'll probably buy from them again, but I am open to it. I don't hate it, but I won't actively seek it out either. And then last but not least, after finishing my Flax Light and my Arctic Willow hat, I have kind of cleared out most of what's on my needles, and I couldn't really decide on what I wanted to start next for knitting, but my parents, while they were here, left a little collapsible folding table, and so we hadn't yet returned it to them. We met up with them later in the week and returned it. But while they left that table in our guest room, I took it as a chance to break out my sewing machine, because I actually had a workspace for once to sew. And I put together 2 project bags. I just used some yarn that I had picked up from Hobby Lobby to practice sewing on. It's been a really long time since I've sat in front of my sewing machine at any sort of regular basis. I used to make purses when I was in high school, because what cool kid doesn't sew their own purses in high school? So anyways, I followed a tutorial on YouTube. I'll link it down below. And yeah, so you can see them right here. They are by no means perfect. It's the same pattern laid out. The pockets are only a little different because on this one, in the section that I was cutting, this is what was left over. And then this one is what is actually called for in the tutorial that I followed. So they're little drawstring pouches that open and close, and little project bags. They have, oh, this one I did a little bit of a modification on. And this is the first one I did. Of course, you modify the first one. So they have a nice square base, and then the inside is lined as well. It is not perfect. As you can see, the 2 parts that I struggled with the most are getting kind of these drawstring holder closures, to line up properly. I don't know if you can tell, but like this one comes up way higher than this one, and they're kind of wonky and on a curve. Because for my entire life, I have struggled to create straight lines. Even with a ruler, it would still end up as a diagonal. Even as a museum professional who routinely cuts out exhibit labels, I still end up with things wonky, and I use tricks where you like make your hashes as you go along and line those up. It's my Achilles heel. But anyways, so yeah, that's a little wonky. And then like my seam around the top where you sew it down is by no means straight. And that's something that'll just get fixed with practice. So after I finished this one, I realized like, oh, I should have sewn a top seam along this piece before, I started assembling the bag properly. So I did that on here. It's a fairly straight line. I think I might also have the tension too high on my sewing machine, but as I said, I'm pretty new to sewing, so I don't really know, and I'm not sure which way to turn the knobs to make it more or less. So I'm just kind of playing around with it and having fun for right now. This one I have not put in the drawstring yet. But yeah, they're okay. They are not things, they're okay for me to use, and I have no problem using them, but I would never think of charging to sell these. And if I get decent enough, I would love to sew one for Zoey and I's Cal giveaway. So I should keep practicing. But I did, when I made my second one, I went ahead and cut out a template so I can make some more. And that just makes cutting out the fabric easier. Unfortunately, something was wet on the table and it got this a little wet and crinkly, but I think that will be fine. But for me, this just makes cutting out the fabrics so it goes a lot faster and it's so much easier, especially when you struggle to draw and cut straight lines. So for those of you who might also be novice sewers, these are your friend. And then the other thing when you do the bottom of these bags, so it's a little different from how I used to construct bags in high school. When I was in high school and I would make bags, you would cut out almost like a really fat T-shape with on your four corners. So if this is a square on your four corners, you would take an equal sized square out of each corner. Then you would sew along the sides, you would sew along the bottoms, and then you would press the two diagonals together, and that's how you would get this flat bottom. With these, it's a little bit different. You go ahead and sew all four sides, and then once the bag is inside out, you create your diagonal, sew that, and then snip off that corner of your fabric. I'm not sure which I prefer or which makes a neater edge or seam. I don't know. Tell me what you guys think if you're more experienced at sewing than I am. But overall, I think they turned out pretty decent. They are lined with a fusible interfacing. It's almost a little too thick for the bags, but that does mean they're nice and sturdy. So yeah, project bag, semi-success. I need to keep practicing. I also need to get a new table. And with one of these, this bag, I made the bottom a little bit fatter than what the pattern called for because I like a wider base. I think this just makes like a 1-inch base, and I think I did close to a 2-inch. So if you guys have any questions about it, feel free to let me know. I'm just sharing my very novice journey into sewing. But overall, I think they're pretty cute. I love the fabric. All right, moving on to works in progress. So up next is my test knit I have been doing for Lisa Ross. It's called Fade into Advent. I did not finish the test in time, and at some point I realized it just wasn't going to happen. So I decided to shift gears. I finished my Plaques. It was what I wanted to work on, but I did get pretty far. So if you watched my Vlogmas, you got to see a few shots of this test knit growing, and I gave up around colors 15, 16. So the last time I talked about this on a full podcast episode, I was all the way down here. I have since knit from here to here, so about, I'd say a little over about a foot, maybe a foot and a half worth of length that's been added. So if I hold this up, you can see it goes from blue into green, into neon yellow, and now it's fading out of the neon yellows and it's going to move into pinks and purples next. So I am knitting this out of my 2018 advent calendar from Felicity Yarn Studio, which is my sister Zoey's podcast on YouTube, also under the name Felicity Yarn Studio. I'm not sure if I mentioned that at the beginning when I was talking about our cow. So yeah, it's coming along lovely. Like I said, I'm on number 1516 right now. I've just started my second or third chevron section, and then around color 20, you start a new slip stitch design pattern within it. So I'm really pleased with it. I have to say, with this, and then I think kind of a lot of Advent type or patterns that are designed for Advent calendars, they are deceptively bigger than they appear. This is a ton of knitting that I've put into this, and it's going to be a ton more to finish it. So the way the pattern is written, you cast on in the round, and then at a certain point you divide half your stitches off, and then you knit one half of the shawl, pick up the stitches on the other side, and repeat the knitting on the other side. I believe I am going to work a little bit of this other half of the yarn, but instead I think I'm just going to finish it out, and I want to turn this into a wall hanging and not into a shawl. And so I think it'll look really cool kind of going out from here, and then one half. I was texting with Zoey and she was like, you should do both halves, but it would be ginormous. I mean, this is close to 3 feet as it is, and I still have more knitting to go, and I don't feel like having a 6-foot long piece of art on the wall. I think it's too big, especially because I have a small house and I might hang it in my office, and I have a small office as well. So that is that. But I think I'm going to try and either find a canvas I can stretch it on, or I might make something myself. But there it is. It's absolutely beautiful. So my only other work in progress I have to show you guys is actually my entry into Zoey and I's cowl. It is being made from stash yarn. It is some vintage Madeline Tosh that has been in my stash for about 2 or 3 years now. And so yeah, I cast on in the new year. I cast this on probably about a week ago, and it is the basic raglan sweater by Hohi Locatelli. It's a basic raglan. It has some really clever short row shaping in the back here. I really like the way she wrote that. It's different from other raglan sweaters that I've made, how they do their short row shaping. And then I've just started waist shaping that the pattern calls for here, and it is made out of DK weight yarn. So this is Madeline Tosh DK Twist. It's 100% merino, and it is in the Twin Peaks colorway. It's this kind of taupey purplish gray with all over multicolored speckles. I mean, everything in the rainbow, red, orange, pink, purple, blue, black, is all throughout there. I am alternating skeins, and I elected not to do I started to do the helical knitting method. However, one of the skeins I'm using right now barely has any speckles in it, and so the other skeins I have are heavily speckled. So I've kind of been alternating between 2 speckle rows and then 1 kind of non-speckle row, and you can see kind of, let me see if I can, so you can see right in here where I had started in new skeins, and the 2 skeins I were using, neither of them were really speckled, and so I quick cut one and then started working in a more heavily speckled skein. I do have to say that, and this is also something that has been on my Make 9, so it's also the start of one of my Make 9s. So yeah, I do have to say about Madeline Tosh, which I've knit one other sweater now out of the yarn, and I don't think I'll buy any more Tosh, at least for the foreseeable future. One, because there's so many other great indie dyers on the market, and my sister's an indie dyer, so I'd rather support her shop. But in addition to that, this is the second time now with a sweaters quantity, and this is a common complaint about Mad Tosh. I'm not saying anything new. Their dye lots are so incredibly inconsistent, and it's infuriating. And if I can go to other dyers out there who offer more consistency and I can support independent business owners, I'm happy to do that. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Mad Tosh at the moment. I initially did not start out alternating skeins at the top with the raglan increases. I thought that was going to be too much to keep up with, but then I realized I wasn't going to be able to make it out of the raglan. So then I started alternating, and I can tell the difference. It looks ever so much lighter at the top of the sweater than the rest of the body, but it almost looks like a nice intentional fade. So I'm not too stressed out about it. But like I said, it's kind of like, come on, Mad Tosh, get your colors straight. And I realize it's because they have a lot of different people dyeing the same recipe, so they turn out a little bit differently, but it is what it is. So far, I've used about 2 skeins of yarn. I don't think... Sorry, Mr. Yarn Curator's taking down the Christmas lights, and I just noticed he's now putting them up around our pergola. It looks really nice. But yeah, I think I'm just going to knit this to pattern, maybe knit it a little bit longer than it calls for, but it's coming along great. It's been the perfect mindless knit in the evenings. So that does it for the knitting and making content. I am going to do just a quick life update for you guys real quick. So had a great time while my parents were here. They were in town for about 2 weeks. One of those weeks they stayed primarily with us, and then the second week they were just a little north of us with some other relatives, and so we met up with them a few times then as well. My mom and I had the chance to go check out a new to us local yarn shop in the area called Fab Fiber. So you'll see some film footage of that at the end here, and it was an okay yarn shop. I was pleasantly pleased that they had a small spinning section, and otherwise is kind of your basic yarns. There was a few that really intrigued me. The sad news is the owner died in November, so the yarn shop is now for sale. I might go back and check out some of what they have because they've started to discount some of their inventory. And see if there's anything there I want to pick up. But as we're doing the stash down right now, it's really my intention not to acquire any new yarn for as long as possible in 2020. There's a couple loopholes in there. I am allowed to buy fiber because that's not yarn. And my birthday's in March, so I might pick up some stuff around my birthday. And then there are 1 or 2 projects on my Make 9 that call for mohair, and I don't actually have that much mohair in my stash, so I've kind of been shopping on the side just to pick up the yarn I need to be able to complete those projects, and pulling the rest from my stash. So otherwise, yeah, I took some time off of work. This week was actually my first full week back in the office, so I've been catching back up. But one of the really cool things that I discovered when I got back in the office last Sunday is that there's an auction taking place tomorrow, and it's a lot of great stuff that my museum has the opportunity to buy. So I'm kind of flexing my time oddly this weekend between going to view the stuff in person and then going to participate in an auction. Which I'm sure it's not as romantic or fun sounding as it is in my head right now, but I'm really excited to get great pieces for my institution and grow our collection of local history, and some of the stuff will be really cool to use in future exhibits when we're finally, in the position where we're ready to remodel our permanent exhibit at my museum. So due to that though, I'm kind of working like 14 days straight it's going to turn out, because I'm going to have to work about an hour today, which is really nothing, to go view the stuff. And then tomorrow I will be working a large portion of the day at the auction. And then Sunday I normally work, which is the start of my work week. And I will be flexing time off to account for Saturday, but it is still working every single day. So that's kind of a bummer, but it's all good. I finished listening to a pretty good audiobook called Circe. It was written by Madeline Miller. It's a really refreshing take on Greek mythology. So it follows the life of a lesser god, Circe, who is the daughter of Helios, who is one of the Titans. And it's really an interesting take because she's the primary character, but woven throughout are kind of the larger characters from mythology or Greek literature that you're familiar with. So, you know, you hear about her encounters with Daedalus and the Minotaur and Odysseus from the Odyssey and Hermes and all these other characters. And so, yeah, it's interesting to say the least. I really enjoyed it. I kind of couldn't stop listening to it towards the end. So that was a really good book. And then, yeah, otherwise just been taking it easy, slowly cleaning up the house. My mother and father-in-law are going to be coming here in February, so kind of a quick turnaround between the relatives visiting. So Mr. Yarn Curator and I are trying to still chip away at things around the house, keep things clean, knock out home projects that we want to do before they come. So I think that is enough rambling for today, though. So if you guys care to stick around, like I said, I'm going to put in the last little bit of Vlogmas footage, and I hope you enjoy that. Until then, I hope you enjoy your making, your crafting, whatever it is you're working on. And until next time, I'll see you later, and have a great day and a happy new year. Talk to you later. Bye.